Hey, hey, happy Tuesday, besties and bosses. How y'all doing? How's everyone's weekend? How's everyone's week going? It is so summer here in New York City. It has been one of those weekends where you're just like super sticky. But we have the air conditioning going on inside. And I think we are not having a rainstorm, though it is great outside. I think last week or the week before we had a big rainstorm while I was live. And I think that the drilling that has been going on outside my window, if you're a client of mine, you probably heard it all day today, has stopped. So we have nice peace and quiet for our conversation tonight. I'm very much looking forward to hanging with y'all. Whether you're watching now or on the replay, say hi. I've got a lot I want to share and dive into with you. So today's live stream, if you saw the email, if you got the note for it, or if you joined me last week, I shared that I am celebrating the Kim Argetzinger Coaching LLC closed or brought in a little over 200K cash in the first 6 months of the year. So we ran the numbers as you do in business, and just a little over 200K for the first 6 months of the year, which is, very celebration worthy. I'm very happy about that. I think if you are not new to my world, if you know me, even if you are new to my world, you probably know that I run an all one-on-one coaching model. So this is something that I'm always particularly excited about because this is all from one-on-one work. And hey, whoever's just joining, we're just getting started. And something I put in the email that I'll share a little bit more about today, because I want to share a little bit about my mindset behind those results. I want to share a little bit about, what it does mean and does not mean to bring in 200K in 6 months. I want to share a little bit about just profit overall. Hey, Courtney, nice to see you. I always feel like I can see people on here. I feel like I can see your energy. So nice to have you here. I want to talk about some of my biggest lessons. We'll have a conversation about all the things. But before we dive into that, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this here and kind of some of the mindset behind this and why I always want to keep having conversations around this. I was actually talking about this with my fiance a little bit earlier this morning. I just don't feel like we have enough conversations in the online space around numbers and what those numbers actually mean and what goes into making those numbers, as well as the mindset behind them. And I think so often we're just hearing like, here are the quick steps to making money, and it can be very confusing. So it feels important to have just an honest conversation and a conversation giving you a little bit of a look behind the scenes. So definitely throw out questions if you have them at me. One of the other things I wanted, before we dive into some of the more meat and potatoes from a veggie, some of the veggies and potatoes around this, I know for me particularly, my path to scaling, for those of you who don't know my journey as much, has been very much I don't want to say slow, because I'm so thrilled, and I think we're actually growing very fast if you look at the business world in general. But in terms of what sometimes we hear online, I think I've had a more slow and steady scaling path. And I know for me in particular, because I have very deliberately chosen to scale one-on-one, I have heard so much noise. I've been in business a little over 5 years. I've heard so much noise around how you can't do that, what you are supposed to do, how it's not possible, how scaling one-on-one, is not the way to go. And I've had just an interesting mindset journey around that as well. So I preface our conversation today with that for a few reasons. One, I don't even think that that's crazy stuff to hear. I think the way I'm choosing to scale my business is not what I would honestly recommend to many of my clients. It's not what many of my clients are doing. Very few of my clients are scaling their businesses that way, for those of them who are in the process of scaling. And that's okay. And I think that's even important to have a conversation around, where as a coach and as a business coach, I can choose one path and my clients can choose a very different path. And in fact, I think that's actually kind of the whole point of coaching, right? To help your people find their path. And I absolutely understand why people, I've heard so much around like how I'm trading time for money, and there is an element of that is true, and how I'm limiting myself and how I could potentially make more money if I did something else. And all of that is potentially true, except for the what's not possible or it's not possible piece. And I feel like that's important to say, because I was hearing all of this, and this is part of my mindset around these numbers. I was hearing this for years, and I could hear how that could be true, and also how it didn't need to be true for me, and how I could hear that there is truth in that, hear there's an element of truth, and also see that that wasn't in alignment for me. And I was so willing to also hold the belief that I so sincerely believe you can make money and you can scale your business in the way that feels good for you, in the way you want to, if that's really in alignment and if you're really showing up for that. It doesn't mean it's always going to happen overnight, but I mean, it's what I coach my clients around. It's what I so just like my whole life. I spent 10 years acting. I went out there because I believe you can make money doing what you love. Like, I so believe that. So I just believe I can hold that belief, and someone can tell me, but Kim, you're trading time for money. But Kim, you can make more money faster another way. But Kim, that might not be the fastest way to scaling or the way I would do it. Like, both can be true at the same time. And I say that because there is so much in our online space, and I don't want to discount what you might be hearing in the online space or what someone might be telling you or what you feel is right for you. That can be true, and this can be true. Laura says, hi, love. Marie says, live. Hey, y'all. Hearts to everyone. And if you have questions or reflections, throw them at me. And same for everyone who watches on the replay, because I know we get a lot of the replay questions. If you're watching on the replay, by the way, tag me if you have a question. I do come back and look at all the comments, but Facebook is really funky and I get buried in stuff sometimes. So tag me if there is a question that you specifically want me to answer. Always so happy to answer those. So that feels really important to preface here. And when I think about my mindset behind how my business has scaled, and if I look at, so last year at the 6 year, just for context here, last year at 6 months, we had brought in 100K cash at 6 months. And the year before, I think we brought in for the whole year, I think it was around 120, just so you can kind of see that trajectory. So we're like kind of collapsing that into 6 months, which I'm thrilled about. But, you know, for all of you in the online space, we also know that I don't want to make this sound like I'm making it wrong. I could also choose to do groups or courses and potentially have the potential of having that quadruple or, 5 times much faster. And I remember my mindset very clearly. So about 3 years ago, when I started to make this decision, I did not know how I was going to scale one-on-one. And I did not know how I was going to scale. I just knew that was very important to me. And I remember my mindset being, I know that this is possible. I just don't know how. I know, or how it is possible for me. My coach actually has the same, I use a revenue share model with one-on-one, which if anyone has questions about it, I can share. We can do a whole another live stream on that. So this is not my brilliant, innovative idea. Wish it was. That was actually, and I will share that it's actually something that delayed me from implementing this, because I didn't implement this until about March of this year. But I remember very much knowing this is how I wanted to scale my business, and also not knowing how that was going to be possible for me in particular. And so much of my mindset and my work, as I'm hearing, you have to imagine, I'm hearing noise all the time from, here's what you could be doing. You're in the place in business where you should be doing this. Here's the next step for you. Not for my coach, thankfully, but we run in circles online where we hear things like this. And I remember so much of my mindset and work for, probably 2 years being, keep your focus, keep your blinders, keep staying focused on what you want, what you know to be true, and keep staying open and available for ideas and testing things out. You will land on something. You just don't know what that is. I know this is possible, or my whole mindset was like, I know this is possible. I will find a way. In my mind, there's no way my business is not $1 million business. That is inevitable. And I'm just willing to be open and available and test things until I find what that thing is that clicks for me. And I'm not willing to sell my own self out, I guess is the best way to say it, for what I actually want, or to sell my values out, maybe is the way to say it. And so that was just a mindset I had, and a mindset I've always had. And I thank Past Me, because Past Me, there's no way I could have known, how my business would grow, or how it would scale, or how it's going to continue to. But I think that's really served me and helped me in keeping the focus and blinders, and helped me to say no to opportunities and money that would have been very lucrative and amazing, but I don't know that they would have been sustainable or given me what I think is so important. I think I've said this probably 8,000 times, but I believe so strongly it's not just about the money you make in business, it's how you make your money that matters, especially once you're making a certain amount of money. Quite honestly, the difference is negligible to you as a business owner. I personally am not driven by shopping, for example. So for me, it's so much more about the impact and the business itself and what the business is doing and how the business can support people. So at a certain level, I think while it's amazing, like that's not enough of a reason, I think, to chase something. I think the way we make our money matters so much, as much, I should say, or it matters equally. And I'm sharing this because that has been so much of my mindset, but it's also been so much of my mindset work because I, like all of us, right? I am human, and we all work in a noisy online space, which is a gift for all of us. It is such a blessing. I think it's how we can all connect. It's how we can talk now. I think it's such a wonderful thing, but it also means we're constantly hearing other possibilities. We're constantly getting opportunities. We're also constantly hearing what you could be, should be doing. I'm in a mastermind with business owners who are at multiple six figures and $1 million, and some are, scaling past $1 million. And even there, being surrounded, it's so supportive and wonderful, but being surrounded with business owners who are, maybe scaling faster because of their business model, or their business model has more potential for that. And I share this with you because I know I talk with my clients about this all the time. I know how easy it is, even if you have that mindset and to believe that to be true, to kind of get that shiny object syndrome, or to think, oh, well, so-and-so is doing that, or so-and-so is doing that, or that feels good, or that feels good. And everyone here, do what feels good for you. That's kind of the whole point of this conversation. But what I have found has been very serving in terms of the mindset is to keep coming back to, what do I actually want? What are my values? Can I be willing to be patient? Can I be willing to stay in my own lane? Can I be willing to even say no to money-making opportunities so that I can make money the way that feels good for me, build the business I want so I can scale the way I want to? I think one of the big, and this is whether or not you're scaling or not, I think one of the biggest lessons I have learned as a business owner and seen through clients and supported clients through is the importance of being really clear. I think I did a bite-sized business on Instagram around this, but being really clear on what money is yours to make and what money is not yours to make, and being willing to say no to the money that isn't yours and say no to opportunities so that you can make more of the money that is yours. Meaning, if I am really focused on the work I want to do, which happens to be one-on-one, and that's not to say, y'all, who knows? I very well could have a mastermind in a few years. I think that's possibly in my future, just not right now. But meaning, if that's what I'm focused on, that's what I want to do, and coaching and the work around mindset and business, which is so important to me on multiple levels. If that's my work, saying no to maybe opportunities. I remember I used to get opportunities from people to write content for them or to write sales pages for them, great opportunities there. I think I shared this on Instagram. I got my first year in business when I was not making great money, and I was definitely scraping by, and all of the extra money I was making was going into my business. Living here in New York City, I got an opportunity to work for someone else's business, and they offered me $10K a month to do that job. And this is a great example of being so clear and focused on what money is yours and what money is not yours, and being willing to say no to an opportunity that was, it's probably 2 or 3 times what I was making at the time, knowing that saying no to that means saying yes to the money that is mine in my business. Hopefully that makes sense. But these have been two, I feel like that splits the mindset into 2 separate things there that have been really, really beneficial for me. And I share that with you because I think it can be a helpful frame. Instead of here are the 7 steps to making money in your business or scaling your business, starting to think about your business through this lens and frame, and thinking about what is the money that's yours? What is the money that you want to make? How do you want to scale? What is the work you want to do, and what's the money that's not yours that you want to say no to so that you can say yes to what is yours in your business? And memory does a funny thing, so don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure when I said no to that 10K opportunity, I'm pretty sure my business started growing very quickly after that, because there's also a really fascinating thing that happens mindset-wise when we do say no to opportunities that are great, but not great for us. When we say no to money that is amazing, but not the money for us to make. I think this happens in the dating world a lot, right? For those of you, who ever maybe dated someone who's amazing or great on paper, but not great for you, as soon as you, say no or don't involve yourself in that relationship, you open yourself up to the person who is right for you, right? You speed up that process for the match that is yours. And I think money and business is very much that way. And I find taking this frame really helps with what the brain wants to do around comparisonitis or what the brain wants to do around making you wrong for your choices. Because I think the other mindset that, and shout out to my coach, Lacey Sykes, who's helped me so much with this, which is making myself right all the time. And my clients probably hear this from me all the freaking time as well, because I think it's just so crucial. So much of the work then I think becomes around constantly making yourself right in business for your choices, knowing that you're right and knowing that that is going to lead to your growth and to your scalability, instead of constantly wondering if you're not making the right decision or choice, looking outside of yourself and wondering if someone else has the answer, someone else has the secret. Whether we're looking at how do you scale in your business model, or looking, I think this happens a lot when we're building a business too, right? When we're looking at what's the strategy you're choosing. When we're not making ourselves right, when we're not trusting ourselves, what do? Like, well, that strategy could work, that strategy could work, that strategy could work. It's so easy to not trust what you're doing, right? To not say no to the strategies that aren't yours, which is kind of say no to the opportunities or money that aren't yours, to say locked and loaded on your strategy. It's so easy to do that and to spin out all over the place and to really slow down growth. If you're a client of mine, you know that I'm annoying sometimes about sticking to your strategy, even if there's another strategy that seems better. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about here with business model and with scaling opportunities and with money opportunities. It's so easy to think something else is better, something else is right, instead of picking and sticking with what is your path. So I think that happens with strategy. The same thing happens with scaling. And so I would offer that to everyone here, because what I don't want is anyone to walk away from this live stream and think like, well, one-on-one, that's the way to scale a business. Because again, quite frankly, I think that's really right for me and probably not right for the majority of people. Marie says, did you invite inspiration? Did I invite inspiration? Marie, would you mind? I feel like you are probably referencing something I said, and I probably saw this a little bit late, so I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, but if you don't mind clarifying, I'm so happy to answer that. Did you invite inspiration? Yeah, if you don't mind clarifying, then I will happily answer that. So that was a big part of the mindset. I think the other big thing that I can say now, kind of sitting where I'm at now in business and looking forward to what's next. So this is really it's helpful for me to share with you looking back at, big lessons, but also helpful for me as a business owner when I'm putting on my CEO hat, looking forward to the next 5 years in my business, because we will continue to scale. And I have every intention of scaling this to $1 million+. And I know we will. But what I remember, this is what we were starting to talk about, and I feel like I got off on a mindset tangent, as I sometimes do. I remember I did not know how I was going to scale one-on-one, or how I was going to scale my way. And I don't know the exact timeline, but I would say I spent a good year, maybe a year and a half, testing things and trying to be clear on that before I was really clear on what that was going to look like for me. And I share that because I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned in business in so many different ways is the lesson that it's really hard to know the answers in advance. And I think I was actually chatting about this with a client today. I think one of the biggest things that can hold us back in business and keep us from growth and keep us from scaling is wanting to know the answers in advance and wanting things to be like neatly tied up in a bow. And I talk a lot about clarity. My coaching framework is clarity, mindset, strategy, and action. But clarity, I think the mindfuck with clarity is so often, I think we think clarity comes first, and then we go out and we build the thing. And what I have just seen over and over and over again is usually clarity is the byproduct of messy action. Usually clarity is the byproduct of testing. Usually clarity is the byproduct of really uncomfortably not knowing and putting yourself out there and testing and exploring different things. And so I share that with you because I am so solid on the revenue share model and on my business model and what I'm doing. But part of the reason I'm so solid and so clear is I wasn't solid and I wasn't sure, and I really allowed myself to really messily run at and test and try different things. And I really allowed myself to I gave myself the patience or the grace of, if it takes a fucking year to figure out what that looks like, it takes a year. Like my business was doing fine, that's fine. Then we just have a year that's sustainable instead of scaling. And I gave myself that gift of patience and of testing and of not knowing. And I'm not saying that was comfortable. I'm sure my coach had many a call with me where I was, none of us like sitting, and I'm an action taker, like sitting in decision, but it was definitely something I just remember over and over again working my mindset on, and just really allowing myself to just be okay with not knowing, but also following the breadcrumbs and then I see the comments, I'll reply to those, but also really being willing to follow the breadcrumbs of ideas I had and follow them to see what kind of what clarity they led to. So I know some of you might know or might have even been in this. Last year, I ran a 2-on-1 coaching model. So that was something I tested. I ran it. I worked with some people and I tested. I loved it and it was really great for me. I'm so grateful I tested that instead of just moving my whole business over to that, because I found out this was wonderful and it's still one-on-one. There were different, I offered the free course to y'all. Part of that was also a test for me to see, how was the course creation process? Like, how do I feel in this? What do I want to do with that? So I think just sharing that transparently. First year of my business, I tested a membership and a mastermind. Mastermind I might return to down the road, but I'm really clear now because I ran that, how I would want to do it and how I don't want to do it and what doesn't feel in alignment and what doesn't feel in my zone of genius or just in the way I want to do work in my space. So I don't know that I would have come to, and I'm going to scale one-on-one with the revenue share, even though I've experienced that on the client side for so long, had I not given myself that gift of, it's okay to not know. It's okay to know what the end result is gonna be. I'm going to scale my business without knowing the how. And that's kind of always the thing. And that doesn't mean I'm gonna sit around and wait for the perfect answer. It means I'm gonna keep showing up and keep allowing myself to be uncomfortable in the not knowing and allow myself to take messy action and I say messy action, but I mean messy action in terms of like not having all the answers in advance. Okay, let me see comments. Let's see. Hi, Shari. Clarity is the byproduct of messy action. Yes, so agree with this. It really, really, really is. I mean, I feel like, isn't that also the fun though? Like, how not fun would it be if we just got all the answers like handed to us in a neat bow? I know for anyone watching this who's like, yeah, but I want the answers, Kim. It's not fun. I hear you. I feel you. Like I'm someone who likes answers as well. And I'm not saying that sitting in that not knowing was super, super comfortable for me. And I also think it's sort of like things are so much sweeter sometimes because of that. And I think clarity can be so much sweeter as well when we allow ourselves to come to clarity through messy action. And I say messy again, action in that sense of, the not knowingness, and that it is that byproduct on the other side. And I really think sometimes with business as well, look, I am so available for all of us to have the quickest results and for everyone's business just to blow up overnight. So available for that. I've had multiple clients whose businesses have done that. Me personally, that hasn't been my experience. I'm also available for both to be okay and both to be true. So I'm not discounting, the fast results, but I think there's also something to not making it wrong when it doesn't happen overnight, and seeing the sweetness in that and seeing it can be just as sweet either way. And there are just as many challenges either way, right? For many of my clients who have grown really, really fast, that comes with the challenges of really fast growth and really quickly having to put together a team. And what do you do when you're fully at capacity? When you're having, I don't want to say slower growth, because I think my growth I'm really happy with it, but more sustainable growth, that comes with different discomfort and different challenges in terms of one of the things I want to talk about, which is one of the things we have to be very mindful of is things like team spend and how we look at profit margin, because we're not running a launch model, or we're not going to suddenly have a 100K growth period next month. And I think just seeing one is not better than the other, and we can be available for both, but whichever one you're in, I think it's so easy to make the other one wrong or the other one better, depending on where your mindset is at. And just seeing both are normal, both are okay. And all of us as business owners are probably going to flip-flop between the experience at different times in our business journey if we're doing this for more than a hot second. Let's see. Marie says, did you invite light and solutions and ideas, higher power? Oh, get a thought that is outside of your knowledge. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, I am definitely someone who yes, I always do this during this time and during journaling. I spent a lot of time journaling and going on runs. That is how I tap into, whether you call it higher power or subconscious mind. I think some of us call it the universe, some of us call it, channeling. I also think it's our subconscious mind doing its work. I definitely get clarity, thoughts, ideas on runs and through movement and in the shower, as most of us do. So I definitely spent a lot of time giving myself white space to think, and I still do for other reasons during that time, to answer your question. And I would also, so this is kind of a side tangent, but I think it's a great question. There is a term dubbed the incubation period. Adam Grant talks about this in his book, The Originals, and a lot of artists use this. And essentially, I think I talked about this on the podcast episode we did with Haley, if y'all want to hear more about this. But essentially, the way your subconscious mind works is it's always working, even on something when we're not, and it loves to problem solve and fill in loops and gaps. And so a lot of artists, a lot of inventors, a lot of business owners, a lot of creatives will very intentionally give their brain an unanswered question and then go off and do something else. Go sleep, go walk, go paint. There are people have come to really fascinating cures this way, because it'll show up in their dreams. But a lot of times what they're doing is they're writing something in their journal before they go to bed. There are writers who will intentionally write a sentence and write and stop mid-sentence, so they haven't even finished their sentence, and the brain will continue to churn on that. So that's something I actively play with, which is giving my brain something to play with, and then essentially doing my best not to think about it, which is not always the easiest thing, because as soon as you're trying not to think about something, all you're doing is thinking about it, but really allowing my brain just to wander and to make those connections. And I think that has served me in so many ways. And spent 10 years acting. I feel like I have a little more practice in trusting that creative process. I think for some people that can be a different muscle to work, but I have found the more we can lean into and trust our brain to do its thing, whether it's subconscious or higher power, whatever you believe in, it really is amazing what it gives to you. And sometimes you have to be patient and wait. Sometimes it is a couple months until you have the next aha or the next answer. Okay, Shari says, what do you mean by 2-on-1 coaching? 2 coaches or 2 clients? So I tested, and I actually still have clients this way, but I did a model that I tested where me as one coach, and I had 2 clients who were not in the same business, and they basically split the coaching fee and coaching container. So they split the fee, they had all their sessions together, they split Basecamp together. So it was the smallest maybe mastermind ever, and on the call each person got coached individually, but they got the benefit of watching each other be coached. I now use that. So I think the nice thing when we test things is it's interesting to see how that gets implemented later on. I now have a few clients that are teams on the same business that I work with them. It's almost like relationship coaching, but with a business team. So I now do that with teams. I have found personally what works better for me, or what I think how I'm best able to help people, is focusing on the same business at one time. Though I still really enjoyed the 1-on-2 model, and if anyone wants to borrow the idea, I loved the idea. It just wasn't, the way my brain works, I just work really well on focusing on kind of one thing at a time. That's just my happy place. So that's what that meant. And then my husband talks about this process as diffuse thinking. Ooh, I haven't heard it called that way. Called that. I like that, diffuse thinking. The incubation period, diffuse thinking, it is such a real thing, whatever we call it. I highly, highly recommend it. This is where pretty much all my content ideas come from. We do have a content strategy, but usually the way this is maybe helpful for everyone to hear too, the way my content strategy works and the way I play with content strategies, having the strategy, in terms of, some things mapped out, and then really allowing myself to go do something else and see kind of, if I plant that on my conscious brain, what does my subconscious brain pick up as an idea or a lens? And pretty much everything we talk about, y'all, is born in the shower or on a run. Hey, Stephanie. Oh, so many lovely people here. I love y'all. Shari says, yes, focus, thinking, diffuse thinking, so cool, and thanks for clarifying the 2-on-1. Neat concept. Thank you. It was a very fun concept. And so yeah, anyone feel free to borrow that. Okay, let me see here, because I want to make sure I actually I'm like off on 14 tangents, talk about the things I was going to talk about with y'all. So that was definitely some of the, my biggest mindsets that I don't think we've talked about. I mean, obviously there were more mindsets than that, but I think those are some of the biggest ones we haven't talked about as much in this group. And it feels, again, so important just to be transparent about and just to normalize a little in our space, because I want to be both a proponent for it's okay to talk about money. It's great to talk about these things. I want you to see what's possible. I want you to see what I'm doing. I want to be a voice and a stand for you can scale any damn way you want to. And I also want to give context to numbers because, yes, again, things can happen overnight and they don't always happen overnight, and both are equally as good. One is not better than the other, and I just want to give some like permission and context around that, and permission around the not knowing phase, and the, you know, looking for the clarity phase, and just to normalize that a little bit. So I said what I was going to share was a little bit about what I actually think about scaling one-on-one, some of my biggest lessons. What I do want to talk about today is giving a little bit of a look, I'm just looking at my notes here, about what this means with my business and personal finances. So let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about the other pieces. And again, feel free to throw questions at me. I'm also sweating, y'all. It's like very humid in New York right now, so don't mind me looking bright red. So I think the other thing I think is really helpful for us to have a conversation about is understanding a little bit about what it means when you're making more money in business, because I think I'm so happy I actually really like encourage clients to share numbers online. And I wish, especially as women business owners, I mean, men do it as well, but I think we have been in general raised in a society where it's not okay to talk about money, or that's, you know, shamed, or we think that that's not okay. And I think particularly as women, it does us more harm than good, because this is how we're not aware of even, you know, kind of what's industry standard or what's possible. I think sometimes we have to see it to be able to be it, to be able to create it. But also, if we think about the corporate workspace, there's such a disparity between what men and women often make. And part of the reason for that is there's not a lot of talk around what people are making. So it's really hard to know, even when you go in, what you can negotiate for. And then if the narrative is it's not okay to talk about money, or it's bad to talk about money, I think that can create a little bit of a story. And not to generalize, I think this happens for men as well, but I think it can happen even more for women, where it's bitchy, or it's not okay, or it's wrong. So like all of you, like I think like let's have more conversation about money and just make it like a neutral thing. But I also think in our business space, what we don't always give context around that I think can be confusing, and I think sometimes can set people up to get themselves in a bit of financial hot mess is, and I know I've talked about this before, but it's worth bringing up here, is 200K cash in 6 months does not mean that Kim Argetsinger, the individual, took 200K cash and put it into my personal checking account. That means my business brought in 200K cash. And that means from my business, I have expenses. And as a business scales, and I think this kind of ties into one of the biggest lessons I've learned, you know, last year I said at the 6-month mark, I made 100K cash in 6 months. And we did last week, we did a live stream around investments. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned is part of scaling, probably one of the biggest parts of scaling your business, is also investing more back into your business, particularly with a one-on-one model, to have team to support you, to, you know, delegate things out, because at a certain point, it's challenging. I have one client who scaled to $1 million as I think a one-person show with just contractors. But for most of us, we're going to start to need support. And for that client in particular, they might not have been investing as much as team, but they were definitely investing in other things in their business. And so as you scale your income, generally your expenses also scale, and generally your taxes, unless you're doing something I don't know about, or you live in Dubai. I have clients who live in Dubai, and they don't have taxes, y'all. But unless you're in that situation, your taxes also increase. So I say this again just to normalize, because I think the idea can then be like, oh, well, like that means like that much money is going home. And I would say that is not the case at all. I'm really thrilled with what I pay myself, but everything does not come back into my, like those are two separate, I am not my business. My business is a completely different entity, and my business has business expenses and needs that get paid first before me as an individual ever get paid. And something I'm not a financial advisor, y'all, like legal disclaimer. This is, not what I'm even legally allowed to give you advice around, but it's something I do chat with my clients about quite a bit, is starting to think about as they're scaling. What are they paying themselves, and paying yourself in a way that makes sense so that you can ride the ebbs and flows of business, but also so your business can have the resources to continue to invest in your scalability or in your growth, and obviously to cover taxes. I happen to live in New York City, so the taxes are extra special here. But I share that just to put a little context. And my business, I'm very blessed. We have an excellent profit margin, like excellent profit margin. We're not spending money on ads. We never have. But the expenses in my business absolutely increase as I scale my business, as they really should, from even like maximizing tax benefits. But it's really running a one-on-one model, even with the revenue share. If I want to keep being able to pour back into my people and pour back into you with content showing up here, right? Having my brain in a place where I can have new ideas and show up and serve my clients at a high level, that means I have to keep investing in personal support, but also in team and in support to make sure other things are being taken care of so that I can show up in the place that's bringing in that revenue. So we don't have to have a whole conversation about that, but it does feel important just to give some context around, and even just to give context that I chat with, had a few conversations recently with clients, which is just also getting clear on like the profit margin that's important for you and where you're, like, I happen to value a high profit margin, but I value my business and what my business is able to do even more. And sometimes we have to just be willing to take a look at that and be really clear and intentional with that, and make sure we're not sort of like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Make sure we're not stealing from our business essentially to pay ourselves, and making sure we're always keeping kind of that bigger picture of the business in mind, as well as what you're paying yourself. Okay, let's see. Hey Jill, hearts to you, I love you. Oh my God, okay, Shari says I had to learn this the hard way during year one, was to separate what the biz made versus what I took home. I think it's just one of those things, whether if you've ever worked for someone else, or I think, if we've ever, like even in the acting space, which is set up a little bit like a business, because I was always, I was still W-2'd for a lot of my acting work, and agent money that I had to pay out, always been a part of a revenue share model, was always kind of done up front. So I didn't have to think about it as much. And I think it's something that I got set up a little bit with, but still my first year in business was such an interesting thing to play, like to understand where it's like this money's coming into your business, but it's not all yours. So I appreciate you for normalizing that. She says, Shari says, I want to eventually do an anonymous survey where biz owners share their take-home salaries and their biz revenue to help contextualize the diversity of how this looks for different models, people. Hey Timothy, nice to see you, says thumbs up. I think that would be such a helpful thing. And I think the thought that comes up for me there just around normalizing is I think everyone would see it varies so widely, and one thing is not better than the other. I think it's just being clear and intentional and mindful around it. But for example, and also just not making yourself wrong on either side. So I think what can happen, and why I think this is so important for us to be aware of, aside from like not accidentally getting yourself to a place where at the end of the year you're like, oh, I have to pay taxes. I didn't think about that. Y'all, you have to pay taxes. So good thing to think about as you're making money. But I think just what we're talking about here with profit margin, I think what can happen on either side is we can hear someone's making $1 million, $2 million, and not realize they have the same take home. Like I think I take home probably the same as many $1 million businesses, and that's not bad or good. It just is. We just have different business models. $1 million business might really need Facebook ads or Instagram ads or ads somewhere and have a bigger team or something like that. And that might be really important for their business model or what their values are, what's really important to them in terms of the impact they want to create. I know I was talking with someone very recently who their expenses are, really big for their team, but that's really important so they can have a wider reach and they're still bringing home a profit. And oh gosh, who was this? I wish I could remember. It was probably about 3 years ago, and it was really actually helpful for me when I was making this decision and thinking about how I wanted to scale. And I wish I could remember who it was. It's someone in the online space who does groups, who basically has scaled to $1 million plus and wrote a really great transparent article. If I think of who it is, I'll pop it in the group. But it was really helpful because she basically broke down and said, I'm still making the same or taking home the same that I did when I was making $300K a year. And I'm okay with that because it's so important for me to scale my business, and it's so important for the business to have the impact and to do the work that it is. And the reason I bring this up here is, so it's really helpful to see that. So if you're that person who's making $1 million and maybe your profit margin isn't as great, so you're not making yourself wrong when there's someone, and then flip, vice versa. If you're in, if I'm saying here, hey, I have a great profit margin and I'm really proud of that and that's a great thing. Seeing that and not making that wrong, but vice versa, me not making it wrong that I have a great profit margin, but it's not at $1 million yet. And I think just both sides of it kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the live stream. It's just so easy in our space because we see everything in front of us to compare apples to oranges and to make your apples that are great for you wrong because they don't look like someone else's oranges, and just to see they're just two completely different situations, models. I have a few clients who are moms, right? I think that's another great example. A lot of my clients who are moms intentionally have a smaller profit margin. They're investing more in teams so they can have more time with their kids and work less in their business. And I share that just again as an example. One's not better or worse, it's what's right for you. But it's so important to understand this and to think about this and to be intentional, because otherwise we make ourselves wrong. Or you are the mom who's trying to have the same profit margin maybe as me, where I'm a stepmom, right? I'm not at home all day with kids. I work in my business full time. And I think there's just so many variables that come into play, and just the more we talk about it, I think the more everyone can see all of you are doing it right for you. And the only time you're in air quotes doing it wrong, there's no such thing as doing it wrong, but it's just when you feel like you're, what we were talking about at the beginning of the live stream, taking money that's not meant to be yours, like you're getting outside of your own lane. And the more you stay in your own lane, the more these things work themselves out for you. Shari says, yeah, totally trade-offs based on what feels best to show up for. 1,000%. If anyone has questions about the profit margin piece or what that means in terms of personal take home, feel free now or on the replay, because I know we do have a lot of replay watchers, feel free to throw that at me. The one thing I will share, and again, I think this is just, just to give a look behind the scenes, in terms of how I pay myself, because I do have the revenue share model. And just to give context, we didn't talk about that a lot, but as new clients work with me, the way my one-on-one scales is I have a base rate, and then 10% of the new revenue they make while we work together gets paid in as a part of their coaching fee, which means my revenue can fluctuate. In full transparency, this is just starting to roll out. I started this this year, but my first clients for this didn't start, I think, until March. And just because of my availability, what are we in July? I've just had like 1 or 2 clients at a time for this. So I'm seeing the beautiful, wonderful, I love this model, but I will see it more over time. But because of that, and because I'm still in, quite honestly, the testing phase of this, I think in a year I'll have so much more data around this. And I do believe in, I'm running full steam at this, but I'm also still testing this. And because of everything we talked about in terms of the money in my business, it's not mine. I pay myself based on base rate that I get from my clients in my business, and I bonus myself out, or I bonus my business out, or I bonus, usually when I bonus my business out, I put it into the retirement my business pays from, based on what is kind of above the monthly average we're bringing in, so that I know the business expenses can always be paid, but I also know I'm never basing my personal expenses or life on things that my business may or may not be bringing in, because it's so important to me as an individual, because of the work I do, because I'm doing one-on-one work supporting clients in their businesses. Maybe if I did different work, this would be very different, but because of the work I'm supporting clients with, it's really important to me that I'm not putting any pressure on my client or on my container for them to make more money or for them to be at a certain place, because I really want to make sure they can be exactly where they need to be in the container. I also don't like putting pressure on myself because I just don't do great that way. So that's why I pay myself that way, but I share that just contextually for everyone. Everyone's got a different way they operate, but I personally find paying yourself kind of based on the average and not having your personal expenses exceed what your business is reliably going to pay you creates a lot of freedom and ease in business. But that is a personal value. Y'all don't have to be on board with that. Just seeing if we have questions. No, okay. How y'all doing? We're almost at an hour. Do you want to hear one or more? I said I was going to share what I thought about the revenue share model, and then I'll share one or two more of my biggest lessons, and we might have to do just a pickup on this. I did not think, I'm always like amazed at how long we could just chat about these things. I shared this a little bit at the beginning, but this kind of is in context with everything I wanted to talk about with this, which is this whole idea of scaling your business on your terms. It's literally my message, right? You can build, grow, and scale a profitable business you're wildly in love with on your terms. And with that, I think the one-on-one revenue share for me is on my terms. And I'm really, really proud of and happy that I have found a way where I can be a great example of like, you really can do anything you want on your terms. And I think for, this is what I was saying at the beginning of the live stream, I think for so many of my clients, this would be the worst model for them in terms of how to scale their businesses. And I think and I share that again, just to give context, where the last thing I ever want to be a representation of is, this is the way to make money. This is the way to get results. Instead of what's the way that works for you. And what I have shared with clients before, because I do have some clients who are leaning into this model, which makes me so happy because I am biased. I think it's amazing. And again, credit where credit is due. This comes from my coach Lacey Sites. I am not the innovator who came up with this business model by any shape of the imagination. But I think what's helpful to understand with this model, and what I tell clients and what I think around this is, it's a model that asks you to first and foremost, want to be focused on one-on-one work. And like, I have many clients who, they don't want to be on calls all day long, right? Part of my business is I'm on calls every day. I mean, I wouldn't have to be, I could space my calls out differently, but I'm on client calls every day, and I'm interacting with clients every day. That feels really good to me. I would do this for free because I love what I do so much and I love my clients so much. I'm not about to do it for free, but I would. But that's why this is an alignment for me. I have many clients who we're working to really get them out of one-on-one. One-on-one does not light them up. One-on-one drains them. I have a few clients who do quite like deep emotionally healing work, and one-on work is very draining for them. And so even looking at trying to scale a one-on-one model, it's like it wipes them out if they're doing a lot of that. We're really looking at how can we move them out of that. So I think even aside from like the potential for this kind of a model to work, I think just for everyone listening, I think it's an amazing model for me because it suits like literally what I want to do all the time. But for many people, it's not at all. A lot of people don't want to hold space for that many hours a week. I think the other thing with the revenue share model that I think is just helpful to conceptualize and to think about for anyone who's thinking like, oh, maybe I want to try this on, feel free to ask all the questions. I think it's like genius, and I pay into it as a client and I receive it as a coach, and I think it's amazing. This is how I paid agents in the acting world. This is what we did when I worked in advertising. Like, I've seen it in so many industries and I think it can be so great, but all the industries I've experienced this in, so when I was acting, when I experienced paying, revenue share, when I worked as an agent in advertising, we used a revenue share. Now, these are all industries where it was a model where the client was going to have the potential to continue to increase their income. And so as an actress, right, you're going to make income, but you also have a potential, if you get on a TV show, to increase your income. If you book a commercial, to get all of those residual checks. in the advertising world, if a director, I worked on a team where we repped directors who did commercials, that director had the potential to book a job that brought in income and to book one that brought in more. So these were all industries where it made sense as a business model strategically for scaling, because there really wasn't a cap, because there wasn't a cap on the client's income. But it made sense as with acting, it makes sense because an agent can meet an actor or an actress where they're at, meaning if an actor and actress is not making a lot of money, they can grow with them, right? They can say, I believe in you, I think you're gonna do great, I'm kind of putting my money where my mouth is, I'm making a bet on you, you're not making money now, I'm gonna work for you, and then when you make money, I believe you can grow, then I will make my money. So same thing kind of in the directing world. That's what happens for my business model. I work with business owners, and I work with business owners who I can then partner with and say, hey, I believe in you. Like, I think all of my clients are amazing, right? And I think one of my gifts as a coach, and I think one of the things I can see, like, I can really see what's possible for someone. I feel like I don't know, my clients will tell me if this is true or not, but I think I have a great ability, like, I can see you in a higher place than sometimes someone can see themselves, and I can hold up belief for someone until they step into it. And I like really can see that in people and see kind of like, this is what's possible. But that also means strategically, as a way to scale, I also know that, like, I'm not married, like, I have no pressure on my clients, but I know this makes sense for scaling because I'm working in an industry with clients one-on-one, like, where they will be able to, maybe come in not making money. I can say, hey, I believe in you, I'm gonna grow and partner with you, and then they will make more money over time. Whereas, and the reason I say this is, let's say you are a healer or something like that, this model, not that you can absolutely be innovative and you might find another way to play with this, but I think the reason this model works in the acting world, in the advertising world, in the business world is because of that, which is what makes it scalable. And so I say that because I think that's something that is sometimes forgotten when this model is talked about. And so for anyone who wants to play with it, I think that's just something I would offer and invite you, if one of the reasons you might think about this is thinking about it through the lens of, does this fit my industry? Is this actually something that I could strategically use to scale? Otherwise, not that you can't use it, but it just might not serve certain industries, like the health industry, for example. I don't know that this would even be legal or in integrity, for example, as a model for scaling. So I do think that's an important context. And then the other context, I share this with another client who was thinking about adopting this model, and something we chatted about for him, so like there were two nuances here, and this is just being really transparent with what I think about this. One of the reasons this works really well for me is I have clients at every stage of business. I have clients who are at the $1 million mark. I have clients who they're just starting their business and we're building from the beginning. So this is a great way for me to meet someone where they're at, to grow with someone. And there are, benefits, trade-offs on either side in terms of the revenue share part, but it works really well for me. The client I was talking about only works with clients who are pretty much like at $1 million plus. And we were talking about how this was kind of a crunchy model for the type of industry his clients are in, because they're already generating so much revenue. The partnership part feels almost like, wait, why would I do this instead of I would rather just pay you $50K for 6 months or something like that. So I share that because, again, if this is something you're thinking about, just as you're thinking about scaling, this is why there is not a one size fits all. Here's someone who does similar work just in a different industry than me, and this model doesn't really make sense for the type of clients he works with. The other thought that I will offer here around this, and again, I love this model, but I think the other thing to think about is it is definitely in my opinion, this is a playing the long game scaling model. While absolutely you can see the results from a model like this short term, you could see faster results by simply raising your rates. So I have another client where it's like that didn't feel good to them, and we simply raised their rates. And I was actually chatting another client last week. We were talking about sometimes if you want to scale, the simplest way to scale is simply to raise your rates, period, right? So I say that because for me, I'm at a place because I work with clients at different places. This is just a personal value thing and just a personal belief thing. I don't feel great continuing to raise my rates, knowing that I am going to work with new business owners and I am going to work with business owners at $1 million plus. And I personally have some thoughts and viewpoints around charging a new business owner $50,000 for coaching when, certain things in their business aren't in a place where that necessarily makes sense for their potential of an ROI. Personal belief. You do not have to adopt this, but that's why this model really works for me. And the reason I share that is because I just want to be really transparent around why I've chosen this, but also I think it's just a good example of this can be amazing for me. I can shout from the rooftops why I think this is the best thing ever. This can be great for some of my clients, and this can be kind of the worst idea for some of my other clients. And just seeing both can be true because there really isn't a one size fits all. And I just feel like that's so important to hear as we're talking about this. And I just want to be clear on my thoughts around it because I had so many questions around it. Let's see. Shari says, totally, I have clients who are less lit up by one-on-one work and thrive off the group community energy. We all get to choose what works best for us. 1,000%. I have, I think that's so true. And I wish that, I'm pretty sure I will do a mastermind in the future, but I wish I was just I love groups and I want to do groups all the time. I don't actually wish that because I love the work I do. And if you're my client, I cry happy tears all the time because I love it so much. But that would almost be an easier, Kim 2 years ago, who was trying to figure out the way to scale, it probably would have been a little bit easier. And so I think that's just a nice example too of, there's just pros and cons to either. One's not better than the other, but you can make both work. Let's see here. Shari says, I'm so grateful to have been able to ask you all the questions about this and not to have to reinvent the wheel with this because it feels magical for me even more than I realized possible. It is so magical. I'm reading these in reverse because I missed that. I'm so happy to hear that. It makes me so happy. And I'm so glad I get to share this with you. And I'm so glad we get to, also I think this is such a great model for the people this is right for. So I just love that we get to have more conversations around this and show the industry that there is more than one way to scale a coaching business, because that is something that I think I just feel so strongly about. It doesn't only have to be one-on-one to group to course model. That can be great, but there's just more than one way. Let's see. Jill says, absolutely you do. Oh, I think you're talking about the seeing people in their higher, what's possible for them. That makes me happy to hear. You guys, can you see? I'm about to start crying. I'm right. I love you all. Okay. Gosh, we've been talking for an hour. Do I have one quick? I wrote a whole list of my lessons and takeaways. So I have one quick last one that I will share with you here. I feel like we covered a lot of them. Here's the last one. Last lesson takeaway that's been really big for me always, but I think particularly big for me this past probably year that I think is just, I've probably talked about on the podcast quite a bit, but it feels like a good thing for us to tie this up in a bow. One of the things I think has contributed kind of mindset wise and business wise so much to my ability to sustain a one-on-one model and scale a one-on-one model, because I think, and to be in business in the online space 5+ years later, because I think there's one thing to being in business and to making some money. I think there's another to, I don't know what the statistics are off the top of my head, but I think particularly for women business owners, our stats are not so great around the longevity, sustainability game. And I don't personally believe in subscribing to the stats too much, but just in terms of, I think what's maybe helped me not be a part of those statistics. I think one of them has been making such a conscious effort to, and I think we talked about this a little bit on last week's live stream around investing, but in prioritizing my peace and joy and in prioritizing CEO time. And they're kind of part of the same, but they're kind of separate and different. And I think it sounds a little like self-care, which it is, but I almost mean self-care on crack in terms of really something that I have just especially because I'm doing one-on-one work. So I am holding space for, hours every day for, many people, which I love to do, but be able to do that. And like one of my rules as a coach is, to the best of my human ability, I always check my shit at the door. To be able to check my shit at the door, as someone I've shared very transparently and openly with y'all, I have trauma in my past, and I'm, in therapy as well, but like, as well as working with a coach, I have to do, and I believe strongly in doing a lot of my own work and really prioritizing, like, yes, it's self-care, but really like prioritizing this type of self-care in terms of my own peace of mind, my own clarity of mind, my own mindset, yes, in terms of positive thinking, which is important, but mindset on a deeper level in terms of like continuing to clear out the blocks and the stories and the limiting beliefs we talk about so much with mindset work, but also in terms of healing wounds, healing core stuff, in terms of regulating nervous system. And that's been something that's always been important to me, but I just see so much as I grow as a business owner, as I talk so much about taking up space, right? As I take up more space, as I share more, having, a podcast and a live stream and a team and clients, all these different things, how much that becomes important at a whole new level, because suddenly, it's not only about you managing your stuff, it's you not just managing your stuff as it like ripples out to other people, but in terms of how that impacts the work you're able to do and how you're able to show up. And I think how you're able to sustain, because if we're not taking care of our own side of the street, so to say, it's hard to support others, but it's hard to want to keep showing up for your business. I've just seen this enough in our online space, people who show up and they make some great wins and then you never hear from them again. I think part of that is, even without things like trauma, though that feels important just to normalize, because I think most people have trauma either with a capital T or lowercase t, but even without that, I think we don't always talk about what, I don't even want to use the word pressure, but like just running a business can bring its own toll if someone isn't prioritizing taking care of themselves at that level. So that is something, not to get in a soapbox about it, not to say you all have to feel the same way, but I have found personally that has made such an impact in me personally, in my personal relationships, and feeling like I actually love my life as well as my business, but also in the sustainability aspect, in that I can genuinely say, I love my work. I love getting up to work every day. I love working with my clients, and I can genuinely say, like, I love my life, and I don't feel the drained, heavy feeling from it. But and I want to keep showing up for it, which is what makes it sustainable. But the reason for that is, I think, because there's such an emphasis on kind of like taking care of that work. Think of it like as a sport. If I was an athlete and I was, a gymnast, or if I was a pro football player, not that I would ever be a pro football player, but something like that, I think the way an athlete can sustain a career, as opposed to athletes who, play for a season and then have an injury and are out or burn out, the way athletes sustain a career is they prioritize their health and taking care of themselves and their training and all of the things that don't happen in the game or on the field or in the competition. I think that's the same for us as business owners. And I think I have, when I see it in my clients, but I also see it in so many of my friends who are doing really well, I think one of the commonalities is there's such a priority on, I think it is self-care, but that word almost gets thrown away in our online space to mean bubble baths. And I love me a bubble bath, but I'm talking about this kind of like deep self-care that really helps you take care of yourself long-term. Sort of if we think about it like through an athlete training for a game mentality. And then the other piece of that is prioritizing CEO time. Sometimes I call it white space time, but I think this is something that, maybe this is just a personal thing, but I think as you grow and as you scale, you just generally have more, like I added a podcast on this year. I have more clients in my world. I have a bigger team. Like there are more things that can get put on your plate. It's kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning of the live stream in terms of knowing what's your money to make and what money do you need to say no to so you can make more of your money. I think it's sort of the same thing with CEO time. As you grow and scale, I think more can get put onto your plate. And I think just being so mindful and having such a priority of, it's so important to protect some time for thinking, for white space, for doing nothing, for ideating, for what we were talking about, like going on a run to see how those downloads come through, for even like being able to clear out the mental chatter from work. I think it just becomes more and more important because you're also holding more and more. But I think if you're not mindful to make it a priority, it can become also more challenging because there's just more in your sphere. So that is something I will pass on to all of you that it's been such a priority for me, and I'm so grateful to myself for making that a priority and continuing to, because there are times when it just seems like, oh, it would be so much easier almost not to, but the payoffs long term are so worth it in terms of the peace, prioritizing your peace, but also in terms of that is where ideas come from. And that's also where I think just insight and inspiration and feeling good about your work comes from. Shari says, that's why I love the word well-being. Here for self-care, but it can feel overused and surface level. Well-being is that's the perfect word for that, well-being. Yes, I'm here for self-care as well, and I love me some self-care, and I'm not hating on self-care, but I think we're saying the same thing. We are here for some real, true self-care, and I think sometimes self-care can be, it's like almost like a whole nother live stream, y'all, but it's sort of like, I think I talk about toxic positivity quite a bit. I think it can be, self-care can fall into that bucket of almost kind of how sometimes we can bypass and spiritually bypass and emotionally bypass with trying to gratitude positive our way through things. I think sometimes we can bypass the true self-care and use self-care as a way to avoid, to numb. There are many forms of self-care that we dub self-care that are actually really sneaky, self-sabotaging things we do. But I think I did a live stream on that at some point. I'll have to find it and tag it in here. But since I have yapped with y'all for over an hour, I won't go down the self-care path on today's live. Thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing this with me. If anyone watching now has a quick question for me, throw it at me. And if anyone watching on the replay does, please feel free to throw it at me. Feel free to tag me in this. I'm always so happy to answer all of the questions and things for you. I love you all so much. Thank you for being a part of my world in this community. This community has been now around. Some of you have been here since I had, I don't know, like 13 people in here. So thank you all for being here. I love you all so much. I'll be back next week with another topic for y'all.